Attitudes. If you ask someone, "How are you?" his response would depend upon his attitude towards life. If his attitude towards life is positive, he will say he feels very good and thank God for what he has. If his attitude towards life is negative, he will start complaining about everything that is wrong with the world. Similarly, if you ask someone about his job, you will find him to be very opinionated. He might say he likes his job very much, or he might complain about the job bitterly. This would be a function of his attitude towards his job. Attitude is a collection of the type of personality, feelings towards the outside world, confidence within self, and more. Next, characteristics and components of attitude. Attitudes have four basic characteristics: direction, intensity, salience, and differentiation. The direction of an attitude is favorable, unfavorable, or neutral. We may like, dislike, or be neutral in our views about a person, a job, or a situation. The intensity of the attitude refers to the strength of the affective component. For example, we may dislike a person, but the extent of our disliking would determine the intensity of our attitude towards him. Such dislike may range from weak to strong. In general, the more intense the attitude, the more persistent will be such behavior. Salience refers to the perceived importance of the attitude. Some people may not like to work with computers as they may not perceive it to be as important as a student in computer information systems for whom the knowledge of computers is mandatory for a career. Finally, attitudes can be high or low in differentiation depending upon how strong the supporting beliefs and values of the person are. The attitudes, irrespective of what they are, generally consist of three major components. These are: number 1, evaluative component. The evaluative component of attitude is a function of how we feel about something. It refers to our liking or disliking for a particular person, event, or situation. Such person, event, or situation becomes the focus of our attitude and is known as attitude object. For example, you may feel positively or negatively about your boss, your friend, the movie you have seen, or anything you happen to see. Number 2, cognitive component. Feelings, however, do not simply and automatically develop. Most often, they are based on knowledge. For example, if you know that your friend is talking ill about you behind your back, such knowledge would result in negative attitude towards your friend. Similarly, you might believe that your supervisor does not know much about the job. This belief is based upon your knowledge of how the supervisor is handling the job. These beliefs, which may or may not be justified, comprises the cognitive component of attitude. Number 3, behavioral component. What you believe about something and how you feel about it would determine your behavior regarding that particular person, event, or situation. For example, if you believe that your boss is embezzling the funds of the organization and you feel negatively about it, you are likely to behave with little respect for such a boss. You may either inform his superiors about it, or you may want to look for another job. Such predisposition to act in a certain way contributes the behavioral component of the attitude. Such a predisposition may not actually predict your behavior. For example, if your boss is embezzling the funds of your organization, you may take some steps, or you might simply ignore it by convincing yourself that it does not directly concern you. In other words, Your intention to behave in a certain way dictates how you actually do. Based upon these components, attitudes can be defined as relatively stable clusters of feelings, beliefs, and behavioral predispositions. By including the words relatively stable, we are referring to something that is not permanent nor fleeting. In other words, once attitudes are formed, they tend to persist and can only be sensed by strong outside or inside forces. For example, your attitude towards someone may be negative but may change if situations or circumstances change. Attitude and behavior. It is assumed that the relationship between the attitude of a person and his behavior is causal in nature, meaning that the attitudes that people hold determine their behavior and what they do. Logic also suggests such a relationship. For example, people watch television programs that they like. That is, their attitude about such program is positive. Research conducted in the late 60s concluded that the relationship between attitude and behavior is, at best, minimal. More recent studies have indicated that there is indeed a measurable relationship if moderating contingency variables are taken into consideration. The moderating variables which have been found to be most powerful include: first, importance of the attitude. Next, specificity of the attitude. Next, accessibility of the attitude. Additionally, they have been also linked to existence of any social pressures on the individual and the direct experience of the attitude. Attitudes that are considered important by the individual tend to be strongly related with behavior. Similarly, attitudes that are specific are more predictable of behavior. For example, if someone really likes his job, it can be predicted that he will stay with the organization for a longer period of time. Attitudes that are frequently expressed are more reliable and more accessible to the memory and hence greater predictors of behaviors. Social pressures have a strong influence on attitudes and behavior. For example, a member of a group may not agree with the group on certain issues but may go along because of the social pressures within the group. Finally, the personal experiences with people and situations affect strongly the attitude and behavior of a person. Positive experiences result in positive attitudes and negative experiences result in negative attitudes. For example, a student who has taken a course with a professor is in a much better position to evaluate the professor as compared to someone who is not his student. The relationship between attitude and behavior is well documented. However, a debate is still going on as to whether the changes in attitudes affect the changes in behavior or whether the changes in behavior affect the changes in attitudes. In other words, it is not clear as to which one is the cause and which one is the effect. Attitude formation. The question often arises, how are the attitudes and subsequent behaviors formed? While attitudes are basically learned over the years, some inherited characteristics do affect such attitudes. For example, physical characteristics such as the height of the person. Tall and slim people are expected to dress well and behave in a sophisticated manner. Similarly, intelligence is primarily an inherited trait and it is related to certain behaviors. Intelligent people are considered to be much more logical and this affects their attitude. Religion and religious beliefs can be considered as inherited, as the religion of the child is determined by the religion of his parents and it determines some aspects of individual behavior. especially those that concern attitudes based on morals, ethics, and code of conduct. Similarly, whether a person is born a male or a female determines some stereotype traits such as aggressiveness and physical stamina. Most of the innate traits are strengthened by learning and experiencing, while some attitudes are adopted early in life from our family values or cultural environment. Most are developed gradually over time through experiences and observations. Some of the learned characteristics responsible for attitude formation are: first, experiences. Our personal experiences with people and situations develop our attitude towards such persons and situations. Through job experience, people develop attitudes towards working conditions, salaries, supervisions, group dynamics, and so on. Similarly, interaction with other people would determine your attitude towards them. A positive interaction with a person would result in a positive attitude towards that person. Many people who have afraid of swimming or horse riding or darkness can track back this fear to some fearful or negative experiences in these areas in the past. Next, perceptual biases. Perception is the result of a complex interaction of various senses such as feelings, seeing, hearing, and so on, and plays an important part in our attitude and behavioral formation. For example, if a manager perceives a subordinate's ability as limited, he will give him limited responsibility. Similarly, we lost many good friends due to our sense perception about them. Next, observation of the other person's attitude. When we like someone, we try to emulate that person's attitude. For example, when we are impressed by someone keeping calm under stressful circumstances and we appreciate such calmness, we might try to do the same. Similarly, our attitude toward a spiritual person changes if we observe him committing what we consider a sinful act. Next, association. Our association with the group we belong to strongly influences our attitude. Our close association with a group would encourage us to be consistent with the attitude of the group. Belonging to an elite group or a religious group would determine some aspects of our attitude. Family association determines our attitudes from the very beginning. There is a high correlation between the parents and the children with respect to attitude in many specific areas. Similarly, attitudes of our peers as we grow older also influence our own attitudes. We make friends with people who share our own attitudes, interests, and preferences. Many times, our parents object to our friendship with persons whom they deem undesirable and encourage us to make friends with those who have an outlook similar to our own. Next, personality. Personality is a set of traits and characteristics, habit patterns, and conditioned responses to certain stimuli that formulate the impression that a person makes upon others, and this impression is a function of a person's attitude. This personality may come out as warm and friendly or arrogant and aggressive. From an organizational behavior point of view, it is believed that people who are open-minded seem to work better than those who are narrow-minded. Similarly, people who are extroverts and outgoing are more likely to be successful as managers than those who are introverts. Next topic, attitude measurement. In social settings, we can judge a person's attitude easily in the sense that we either like or dislike a given attitude. However, at work, it is more difficult to measure the attitude of workers towards work. Such measurement becomes necessary for the management to predict employee behavior, which will affect the quality of work. From the viewpoint of measurement, attitudes may be defined by describing measurement systems that social psychologists use to measure attitudes. The most common and frequently used method of measuring attitude is by simply asking people about their attitudes towards various issues, people, and factors. This is accomplished by attitude surveys and questionnaires. Generally, bipolar scales are used to measure the attitudes towards a job in terms of liking it or disliking it. However, different scales have been created in order to measure the degree of such liking or disliking. One of the most commonly used ranking scale is the one which has 5 categories ranking from most favorable to most unfavorable. Typical categories and their ranks are: number 1, strongly agree; number 2, agree; number 3, neutral, undecided; number 4, disagree; number 5, strongly disagree. The standard survey for measuring the attitude of the employees generally presents them with a series of statements and questions, which also has a rating scale indicating the extent of agreement or disagreement, as stated above. Some examples of statements are: "This management is very fair in dealing with employees," or "My job makes the best use of my abilities," or "I know what is expected of me," and so on. By totaling the responses on the customized questionnaire, the individual's attitude score can be calculated. The analysis and evaluation of these scores can then be carried out for different teams, work groups, departments, or the complete organization. The results of attitude surveys can sometimes surprise the management. Management of one of the organizations was very happy with the way things were going. Employees were actively involved in divisional decisions, and the profitability was very high, leading to the assumption that employee morale was very high. The management conducted a small attitude survey in order to confirm their thinking and belief. As a part of the survey, the employees were presented with some of the statements in order to identify their extent of agreement or disagreement. These statements included the following: First, at workplace, your opinions are given importance. Second, you are encouraged to become a leader if you are willing to do so. Next, your personal development has been discussed with you in the period of last 6 months. These answers were totally unexpected. The results of the survey indicated that disagreement to the first statement was expressed by 43% of the employees. Disagreement to the second statement was expressed by 48% of the people, and 62% employees expressed their disagreement for the third statement. Based on this survey, the management made some changes to boost the employee morale, especially giving attention to such matters that cause alienation among the employees. By using such surveys on a regular basis, the management can get a valuable feedback about the perceptions carried out by the employees with respect to their working conditions. The management can also become aware of the different potential problems that may hit the organization. The diagnosis of these problems is possible at an early stage with such surveys. Once the management is notified of these problems, they can take needful steps in order to rectify these problems, and timely actions can be taken in order to avoid any negative consequences. One of the purposes of such surveys is to determine how variables relate to each other and how changes in one variable are associated with changes in another variable. For example, if we want to find a correlation between how fairly people believe they are being paid and various work-related attitudes, such as their willingness to help coworkers, the researchers might find that the more workers feel that they are unfairly paid, the less likely they are to help their coworkers. Such studies can alert the management to take steps to create a more collegial work environment. Next topic: attitudes and productivity. There are two keyword attitudes which determine the importance of attitude-behavior relationship with respect to productivity. These are job satisfaction and organizational commitment. Equally important are the complex relationships between job satisfaction and job performance. Job satisfaction. Often we assume that a happy employee is a productive employee. To some degree, this assumption is valid. Job satisfaction is defined as a positive feeling about one's job. A high degree of job satisfaction reflects a high degree of happiness, and a high degree of happiness with the job generally results in higher dedication to work and higher productivity. A job is more than just an activity. There are different job elements that may be responsible for determining the satisfaction and dissatisfaction level of the employees. However, it may be a complex process to identify the different job elements, such as interaction with co-workers and superiors, following organizational policies and rules, meeting performance standards, and so on. It can be safely assumed that, generally speaking, people are satisfied with their jobs. This assumption is based on the observation that a dissatisfied person can always change jobs. Of course, professional people are more satisfied than routine blue-collar personnel such as factory workers. This can be due to the fact that professionals have more challenging and exciting jobs than manual workers who have routine and monotonous jobs. Management is interested in measuring job satisfaction because low job satisfaction can result in costly turnover, absenteeism, and tardiness, elements that result in poor productivity. Studies have shown that the level of overall workforce, job satisfaction, and organizational performance are linked. This indicates that the effectiveness of an organization increases with the satisfaction level of the employees. Therefore, the more the dissatisfied employees in an organization, lesser is the organizational effectiveness. As satisfaction is a result of satisfactory work experience, high levels of dissatisfaction help to identify organizational problems that need attention and redressal. Next topic: organizational commitment. Organizational commitment refers to an employee's involvement and dedication to the organization and identification with it. Such commitment goes beyond loyalty and requires a serious and sincere effort on the part of employees to accomplish organizational goals. Organizational commitment continues to be influenced by continuous job experiences, with factors that affect job satisfaction and hence organizational commitment such as pay relationship with superiors and co-workers, working conditions, opportunities for advancement, challenges, and so on. With the passage of time, organizational commitment becomes stronger as the workers spend more time in the organizational environment and get to know the other workers at a more personal level. Organizational commitment leads to low absenteeism, high morale, and high productivity. Committed individuals tend to be more goal-directed, which has a positive impact on productivity.